Welcome to episode 18 of the Ride and Inspire Rawcast. You know what I do here. I talk about mountain bike skills out on my creativity walks, and I talk about the psychology and neuroscience of motor learning, and I share my experience as an international instructor trainer certifying instructors all over the world. And I share my day-to-day life as a full-time skills coach and a mental trainer for all levels of riders, so working with all levels of riders. And today I'm talking about frustration, the most common reasons for frustration, how you can reduce frustration, and also how you can learn skills faster if you transform frustration into motivation. I value your time, so let's get into it straight away. There are three very common reasons for frustration. And the first one that I see extremely often, especially in adults learning to mountain bike, is that their expectations are totally unrealistic. And here's an example from a client of mine who got frustrated because she wanted to learn to jump, to drop, and to ride very steep and loose terrain. When we started working together, I thought when she wrote what she wanted to learn, I was expecting that she would be riding much longer. But then when we looked into it, she revealed that she'd only been riding for 4 months. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but for most people out there, being able to perform these skills that are way more advanced and complex than most people think is not something you will learn within a few days of practicing or taking single-day skills clinic. It's just not realistic because our body and brain don't work that way. You can learn these skills, and I have worked with hundreds of riders who can now jump, drop, and ride technical sections. I've even worked with a lady for the Olympics, but it's not going to be possible within a few days. My oldest client is 84. Even he learned these skills. However, it's only possible with dedicated practice in a safe environment to enable your body and your brain to develop the skills, the anticipation, the finesse, the coordination, and thus also the confidence. And all of this can be fun, and actually it can be super easy. You can do it with drills that you can do right in front of your doorstep. And to show this to you, because most people think you need trails, you need Gnarr, you need all these sections to practice what you need to ride these sections, which of course it's fun, it's important to be out there on the trails, but to develop the skills and the coordination, you don't actually need a lot of trails. So I'm launching a step-by-step home training program with live webinars on March 15th, and you'll also see that you can set up most of these exercises with the flick of your hand right in front of your doorstep and practice right there because your brain needs to be relaxed to learn. So you need to build the skills, the coordination in your body, in your brain to perform these skills. And that's why most people are frustrated, because they're expecting that they will build these skills just by riding. And to be honest, I thought so as well at the beginning. But once I noticed that I really need to practice more and practice in a structured manner, that's when I started to turn my frustration into the motivation to practice. That I say, okay, wow, this frustration is just showing to me this is important to me. So I need to practice this because I want to be able to do this, but not by just expecting this to magically work overnight. And why do we think it's magic? Why do we think these skills will just magically appear? Maybe it's because we see them in social media or out when we're riding trails and we see other people perform these skills and it looks super easy. And what we forget is that anything that looks easy, that this person has spent a lot of time making it look easy, that there is no such thing as overnight success. Every person you see out there who is successful, who is skilled, has spent a lot of time making this look easy. And this brings me to reason number 2 for frustration, also one that I see a lot in my daily job as a mountain bike coach and as a mental trainer, and that's comparing yourself to others. Often we compare our weaknesses to the strengths of others. And we compare ourselves to people we idolize. And to be honest, that's simply not fair. Just imagine if a friend would come to you and say, hey, it's just so frustrating. My husband, he can lift this box filled with bottles just easily and I can't lift it. Wouldn't you tell her, hey, that's not fair. Your husband is much stronger. He just has much more muscles than you do. And although this may sound trivial, how many women out there compare their fitness, their ability to bunny hop or perform whatever skill on their mountain bike to their husband and then get frustrated, right? Many of us women do. And it is very similar because the bike weighs almost the same for a man as it does for a woman, and the man can muscle it up much more easily than a woman. So they do say comparison is the thief of joy, and this is very true because you can use comparison to fuel you, but most of us use it to frustrate us. But once we start seeing this and saying, okay, look, am I comparing myself to someone and to someone's abilities where their abilities are their strengths, and this is maybe right now it's one of my weaknesses, am I being fair? Or is this person maybe in their background very different to what I am? Have they been practicing this much more? And am I expecting, again, reason one, am I expecting to be able to perform just the same way without putting in the same work? So am I actually being fair here? Is the person I'm comparing myself to, is this person really very similar to me? Do we have the same background? Does the person have the same bodily prerequisites as I am? And start looking at it from a broader perspective and start being fair to yourself and start using comparison as a fuel and saying, okay, I'm going to compare myself to myself from yesterday and not to another person who has a completely different background. And then there's a third very common reason for frustration that goes hand in hand with reason number two, and actually reason number one, and that's most people practice too little or not at all. Mountain biking, just like any sport out there, requires you to build skills. And to build skills, you need to practice. That's why they say practice brings progress. And no, just riding is not practicing. Riding is also important, and yes, you will improve just by riding, but mostly you'll improve your coordination, your anticipation, the ability to read lines, your endurance, your strength, of course, but your skills only to a limited extent. You'll learn to cope with the skills you have, and you'll ingrain these skills by riding. And by improving your coordination, anticipation, ability to read lines, and everything I said before, some skills and some trails will work out better. But if you want to build new skills, specific skills, refine your skills, and this is not me saying this, this is backed by science. I'm going to link a YouTube video below where I talk more about this. To do that, you need dedicated practice in a so-called learning zone where your brain is not distracted and where errors do not have negative consequences, and you cannot build new skills in a so-called performance zone, which is what we are doing out on trails. And that's why many people who just ride and never practice in a dedicated fashion, they hit a plateau sometime and then they get frustrated because, again, as I said, this goes hand in hand with reason number one and two, is they're expecting things that are unrealistic, and then they start comparing themselves to other people who may have practiced more or who may have invested more time into their skills or who just have a different background and maybe build skills more easily. What we need to remember in general, and what most people omit, is that to succeed at anything in life, whether it's mountain biking or anything else, you actually just need one main ingredient. And this ingredient is persistence. Also, what you need is a healthy relationship to failure. Why so? Because if you don't have that, so if you punish yourself for failure by getting angry or, for example, feeling shame, this punishment is stopping you from progressing because it's stopping you from trying out new things. And one of the most common reasons I see why people don't progress and why people don't even try things is that they have this fear of failure. And when you are scared of failing, then when you don't try, you can say, oh, I would have succeeded if I would have tried. That's why people procrastinate a lot and don't even try, don't even play on their bike, because they have this fear of failure, which is really keeping them hostage. But if we keep doing the things we're good at, are we actually learning? Are we progressing? And that's why we need to suck at things. We need to look stupid at things, because that's our portal to growth. The failure is not an undesired side effect. It's a necessity to grow. And once we start embracing failure and seeing it as a necessity to learn, and then setting the circumstances where failures do not have negative consequences by practicing in a safe learning zone and not punishing ourselves for failing by not talking to ourselves in a bad manner when we fail, and by not feeling shame, not feeling anger, but by accepting failure as a necessity to learn, as a learn booster, that's when our skills actually start to skyrocket. And there's this super interesting study about this, where people are learning to program something, and there's one group that can keep trying without getting a punishment. So they're just like, oh, that didn't work out, try again. And there's another group, they lose point every time they make a mistake. So they can see that, oh no, this is not working out, my points are reducing, this is not good, so they're getting punished. Which group do you think tried longer, and which group do you think succeeded? So which group had a higher success rate? Actually, it was the one that did not get punished. So the ones where it just said, that didn't work out, try again. Those were the ones who were persistent, they tried for longer, and they had a much higher success rate. This experiment, by the way, is called the Super Mario effect. I'm going to link it below. It's very interesting. This Super Mario effect, you can use that on yourself. You can utilize these findings and say, okay, I'm not going to punish myself for failure. I'm going to set the circumstances for learning where failure is this necessity and failure is an important part in my learning process by practicing skills in a safe learning zone, and maybe even laughing at myself if I fail and having fun with it, playing, because that's what will really enable you to be persistent, to develop that practice habit, and then to grow, to learn, to improve, which will of course not only improve your skills, but also your confidence, because competence brings confidence. And that's exactly what my home training courses, but also my program is about. It's about setting the ideal circumstances for playful failure, which will then inevitably lead to success, to improvement, and more confidence, way beyond your mountain bike confidence, because we start to learn and accept that failure is this entry point to growth if we do it in a safe learning zone and don't set ourselves up for real failure out on the trails by practicing things that we're just not ready for, which again brings me to point 1, expecting things that are not realistic. You can find more about the program below. I'm going to link it. It's starting on March 15th, and it's a set of live webinars, Q&As, and home training drills right in front of your doorstep. I'm looking forward to it so much, because this is the first of this kind worldwide, and I know it's going to help so many people to finally find a practice routine that works. Because if we look at successful people, all that makes them successful is actually that they have successful habits. And if we look at successful mountain bikers, what makes them successful is successful practice habits. And that's why I'm so excited about this program, because I want to help you build a realistic practice habit. Nothing like you need to practice every day, like many challenges are about that, and then you tick it off and at the end of the month you go back to a never practice and only ride life. But instead, It's about finding a realistic practice habit that you can integrate into your daily life to avoid frustration and to enable growth. So I'd like to sum up the most common reasons I see for frustration and how you can change them to turn frustration into motivation. The first one is unrealistic expectations. Be realistic in your expectations. Don't expect skills or anything to appear magically. Take your time and see that frustration as a spark showing you, okay, this is important for me. I need to start to invest time. Number two is don't compare your weaknesses to the strengths of others. I know we do this a lot, but trust me, it's not helpful. If you start to do that, then literally tell yourself, okay, stop. How can I use this comparison to fuel me instead of frustrate me? How can I start comparing myself to myself from yesterday, or maybe look at it from a different perspective and see where am I maybe even better than this person, and maybe does this show that I've done this more often before? How can I do the things that make me better more? And the third one is too little or no dedicated practice, just writing and not practicing, which unfortunately often leads you into a dead end. And if you'd like to practice with me, then do check out the link below, because I'm really looking forward to seeing you there. That's all I've got for you today. I hope you like this episode. Give me a rating wherever you're listening to this podcast. That really helps. Share it with other people. And I hope to see you again for my next episode. I'm Roxy. Goodbye.